all welcome Alison to the stage.
I do my head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling?
Good morning. I am so happy and privileged to be here. As you know, this is a one-of-a-kind event. The energy, the attention to detail, all of it. Been such a privilege to be able to be part of this and now to be here with you. So as we get started, I want you to show of hands. We're gonna do a little bit of easy participation. Show of hands if you are on LinkedIn, meaning like you have an app, you check it, you at least like scroll around. Okay. I am on LinkedIn now as well. I have been on it for a while, but for the longest time I used it as what I would say is a glorified address book. My students would send me requests and I'd accept their invitations, but I didn't do anything other than that. And I had a friend who's a coach, an executive coach, and she said, Alison, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I came across your profile. It's embarrassing. You need to clean it up, Alison. It has numbers after your name, the gray bar, there's no about section, you're an adult, fix it. So she gave me some basic instructions as to how to fix it. I did. And then she comes back as soon as I do that. Now, Alison, you should start posting things. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I was fine to clean it up, but I'm not sure I'm gonna post anything. But it sat there in the back of my mind. I ignored it, but then came the pandemic. And because this is what I do a lot of days, my calendar went blanker than most people. So now all of a sudden I'm home, and I realized very quickly I was never gonna bake sourdough bread. And I had already watched The Tiger King. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what else to do. So maybe let me try this whole posting on LinkedIn. And I did. Put a post up there. And now I'm quite active, and if we're not already connected, at the end, I'll give you an easy way to just connect with me there. But now that I spend time on the platform, I tell you that because I not only post, but of course, you read other people's posts. So I wanted to start our conversation today with, in my opinion, the best post that has ever come through my LinkedIn feed. Not by me, but something that I saw. And it's this one from digital health strategist Lauren Howard, who I've still never yet met in person. But she posted, women really only want three things: equal pay, respect, and pockets. And I thought, well, that's true. As spoken with somebody who managed to find a skirt that has pockets, I'm like, I can totally attest to that. So it made me laugh. I could, see the truth in it. But I also noticed something that you might not pay attention to because of the work that I do. I was particularly struck by the first two items and their order. So pay, which we talk about a lot for people, but we also talk about it in terms of issues that can have implications by gender. Pay is a form of what psychologists like me will talk about as power. So power is controlling resources that have value. I have my three kids. My oldest just turned 16 last week. On Monday, I took him to get his driver's license. When I hold the car keys, that's a resource that he might value. And that gives me a form of power in that moment. I have the keys, you want them, and power can be a source of influence. People are more likely to do what you want them to do if you're holding something that they want in exchange. At work, right, money's a resource. If we control budgets, if we can hire and fire, give people good performance reviews or bad ones, if we can make decisions without having to get approval. And power is, as we know in psychology, what we call a fundamental human need. People like to have control and autonomy over their lives. It makes life better. You don't have to control everything, but when we don't control anything, it damages our physical and our mental health. So power is really, really important. But so is this thing that's currently sitting here in second place, and that is respect. And again, psychologists like me will use the term status to talk about respect. And status is, again, how much other people respect and regard you. This is also critically important for our life satisfaction. It is also a fundamental human need. We want to be valued in our relationships. We want to be respected. But most of the time when we talk about power and status, we put them in this order. Like, respect and regard are very nice to have, but they don't pay the bills. If I can get paid, if I can get promoted, then I will feel like I have done the most important thing. And although I understand that logic, it doesn't actually correspond to how we know these decisions ultimately get made. The idea is that when we are not respected, not only are we not influential, we can't do our best work, but it also makes it really hard for us to actually get any power, because nobody wants to put resources in the hands of people they don't respect and they don't value. So one of the things that I try to do, because status is an area where I've done research for over 20 years, is to shine a spotlight on status, to say, here's what this is, and here's how you can affect yours as one of your most important life resources. It makes life more satisfying, but it also is a great fundamental resource that propels us forward in our career and leads us to influence. And a lot of times, if you want to understand the distinction between power and status, we might find that we could have one, but not necessarily the other. So one of my favorite studies that illustrates the distinction was a study of a 9-person work group. There were 6 men and 3 women, as depicted in this picture here, and they studied the work group. And everybody in the group had an equal power in the sense that they would often decide things by voting in committee, and everyone's vote counted equally. Yet, they found status differences in the group, in this case according to gender, that although the men and women participated at equal rates, they spoke just as often, the women were much more likely to be interrupted. And an interruption is one of many marks of status. When you are interrupted, you are literally silenced. And when you don't get to speak, it becomes much harder for you to be influential. So interruptions are one way we can see whose ideas are respected and whose aren't. The women were much more likely to be interrupted, despite having equal power as the men. Now, that probably doesn't surprise you, but what might surprise you is the specific work group in question, which you all know. Okay, so I'll say the important details again, and you will be able to shout it out. 9 people, 6 men, 3 women, they all have an equal vote. There we go, beautiful, okay? This was a study of the United States Supreme Court at this time, okay, when Justices Ginsburg, Kagan, and Sotomayor, again, participated just as often as their male justices, but were much more likely to be interrupted by everyone, fellow justices and people appearing before the court. And this idea that we always think we're just one promotion or title or advancement or reward away from respect. And you can see here, right, you could have a tremendous amount of power and a tremendous amount of status overall, but doesn't necessarily mean that in your local environment, you're guaranteed to be respected, you're guaranteed to have a voice. So status is something we all manage from the very first days of our career and relationships until the very last. And the interesting thing about status is your status doesn't actually belong to you. It's not something you can steal. It's not like car keys, right? You can't just hold them in your hand. Your status is actually a property of your network, meaning that it exists only in other people's minds. It's what people believe about you. So what we're going to talk about today is the idea of networking, which I know is something that often gets mentioned in surveys at Guild in terms of things that people want to work on in terms of professional development. But what are you trying to do when you build your network? What you're trying to do is you're trying to build status with as many people as you can. And when you start to see networking as a status building activity, it can open us up to thinking about how to do this in ways that are both more fun, authentic, and actually more productive. So this is going to be the go to your phones moment. And right here we have a QR code that will take you to a mentee question. And the question, you'll see the 5 responses, is how do you feel when I say building your network? What does that phrase invoke for you, okay? And there'll be 5 options here. We can thank ChatGPT. I decided this is my attempt to try to get with the times. So I asked ChatGPT to generate some options, and then I edited them a bit. But go to here and just don't overthink it. If this stresses you out, it's going to be a very long day. I want you to just put in there the first reaction that feels right out of the 5 when you think about the phrase building your network. And once we get a chance for people look like they're on their phones, anyone still struggling with the QR code? Okay, we can switch over to showing the results screen as things come in. All right, so as people are filling in their answers here, raise your hand if you're a love it kind of person. All right, if you're sitting near a love it kind of person, these are people you want to make friends with, and because they're going to teach you a lot about how to work the room, okay? All right, anyone want to say they're in the I'd rather wrestle a bear category? I will say, I'm a true, despite the fact that I speak for a living, I'm a true introvert. And so I have become comfortable doing these things in my own way, which I'm happy to talk about. But I definitely fall more toward that end of the spectrum. But we see a big majority here, right? Of, okay, I'll do it as long as it doesn't feel horrible. And that's exactly what I want for you. So the majority of people are sort of in this space that we are going to talk about, which is how do we build authentic relationships that are a resource for us to be able to drive value for Guild, value in our own lives, and do it in a way that we actually get up and find joy in rather than thinking that it is drudgery. So that is essentially what I like to help people think about. So if we go back to our slides here, I did write a book called Likeable Badass, but I want to talk to you about why that title and what that actually means. It's catchy, I hope, but it's not just catchy, it's actually a reference to how do status judgments get made? Because here's what happens. All day, every day, you walk around and you encounter people. You encounter people you work with. You see someone on TV or social media. And your brain is always updating. What do I think of that person? Well, those judgments that you're making, they're not random. You're always trying to figure out two things about other people. The same two things that everyone else is trying to figure out about you. The first one is, do you care? Right? We want people who care about us and therefore are going to make our lives better. So not just likable, but warm, generous, honest, sincere. If I believe you have those qualities, I respect them because I think that being in a relationship with you is going to be good for me. You're going to do good things for me. The second thing we care about is, are you capable? Can I rely on you? Right? I always say everyone from a prior era of their life has a flaky friend, like a fully grown adult who just can't be trusted to manage much, right? Their phone's always on 3%, they're constantly 30 minutes late, like if you never let them like call the morning Uber because they're gonna oversleep their alarm, whatever it is. You love them, but you say, I don't know if I can really trust you and rely on you, right? We respect people when we say, hey, whatever I put in your hands, whether it's call the Uber or collaborate with me on this project, I know it's gonna get done. You're competent, you're capable, you're organized, you're persistent. We respect that too. And so this circle here in psychology is called the interpersonal circumplex of person perception, which we can all agree would have been the world's worst title for a book. But it's really fundamental. It basically says people are always trying to put you somewhere in this circle. And where do you want them to put you? You want them to put you in the top right, where they see you as really caring and really capable. That's what you're going for. And so that's what I refer to as likable badass. And the idea here is that what do we do when we network? We want to find authentic ways to convey I am caring and I am capable to the largest possible audience. And that's what it means to actually have a really strong network. So I want to talk to you about 3 steps, and I'll leave you with a bit of a challenge, and you're in the perfect spot to execute this challenge, because if you take it on, you can have it done by the time the event ends. So first step in networking is meet more people, okay? Rule number 1, people cannot respect you if they do not know you exist. Now, I want to open your mind to thinking about meeting more people, particularly for the fellow introverts out there who say, like, the last thing I want to do is meet people ever. I want to introduce you to a woman named Rachel Sheeran. This is Rachel. As you can probably tell from this picture, this is a picture from Rachel's website. Rachel is an extrovert, okay? She is personality for days. She is also a speaker. Rachel has been an extremely, extremely valued member of my network, somebody that I have learned a tremendous amount from, somebody who has opened so many doors for me. But I use Rachel as one of the many people that I know as an exemplar because I wanted to point out where I met Rachel. In an airport bar. I took the very last seat at the Raleigh-Durham Admirals Club, and there was Rachel sitting next to me, extroverted for days, chatting with the bartender. I normally don't talk to people in airports. I got my AirPods in, I keep my head down. But she was next to me, and she was talking about being a speaker, and that shared similarity was enough for me to actually turn to her and say, tell me about what you do. I speak as well. And we chatted during that during our time there, and our flights, took off and we went our separate ways, but not before we had exchanged cards. We got in touch afterward, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. And Rachel, I'm gonna share with you all the different things I've learned from her. She's opened up doors, but it would have never happened if I had just kept my eyes down and my AirPods in. And it was a turning point for me, even as an introvert, to say, what is the harm in meeting more people? Because the next great person in your network may not necessarily be in this room, although there are a lot of great people in this room that are in your network. It could be your next door neighbor, the person standing next to you at the DMV. So getting in the habit of just having more conversations, most of which go nowhere. Since then, I have become more open to talking to people at airports. I'm in an airport every single week. I have never met another Rachel. But you know what? I haven't actually wasted that much time either. So as we bring people into our network, that's step one, but then we have to talk with them, we have to engage with them. And we have to do so in a way that says to them, hey, I am very caring and I am very capable. And I wanna offer you, there's lots of different ways we can do this, but I wanna offer you a couple different ways. I'm gonna start with something that I learned from Rachel. Because when we talk about having to talk about ourselves in ways, it doesn't actually have to mean that you are literally vocalizing words. We can write things about ourselves too, often in places that we may not have even thought about. So one of the coolest tricks I learned from Rachel, and she didn't intend to teach me, it just happened as our relationship unfolded. We didn't live in the same state, so we were starting to develop a relationship via email. And when I would email Rachel, I learned that she had her out-of-office email reply on constantly. Now, it made sense because she was a speaker and she was often out of her office, but I thought, gosh, I don't know, probably 45 at the time I met her, 25 years of professional life, I had never once turned on my out of office. I was raised by a mother who said, you never tell people when you're going out of town, Allison, they will rob your house. And I internalized this, when I finally get email as a working adult, I internalized this to mean, don't ever turn your out of office on, that's even worse. That's signaling to who, gosh knows who, that you're not home, and no one needs to know your business, so you don't do that. But I got Rachel, and she started, every time she had these messages, and all of a sudden a light bulb went off, given what I study. I thought, wow, what a brilliant and efficient way to tell your story without ever having to talk to anybody at all. So I want to share with you Rachel's first out-of-office email I got from her. And I want you to see in just this tool how she's able to convey, even to you who've never met her, how capable and caring she is. So this is the first part of it. Basically says, aloha, if you're getting this, it means I'm currently rocking a keynote on stage today. I'm delivering fun engagement, beautiful visuals, and an impressive virtual experience for clients. I love partnering with this team, right? I'm capable, I'm in demand, I know what I'm doing, right? Then she goes on, and I love this part. Since I'm 100% focused on serving my clients, like I'll be focused on you soon, my response will be delayed. If it's time sensitive, or you want to text me a cute picture of your dog, here's my phone number, all right? Great use of humor, this idea that my delay is simply because I care. I care about really serving my clients. And I thought, what a smart tool this is in her personality to be able to do this. And since then, I've seen lots of examples of people who use their out of office to tell their story in a way that once you read it, you think, I want to get to know this person. I just got a great email from someone I know who read the book, used this technique, and then wrote to me. And she said, I did what you said, and I went to my kid's soccer game, and a parent approached me and said to me, I didn't realize you were such a big deal. And she said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, I got your out of office, because again, everyone gets it, even the parents on the soccer team. I got your out of office, and it made me curious. So I went to the internet, and I looked you up, and I had no idea how much you had accomplished. So when we start to engage in relationships, we have to find ways to tell our story, using all the tools available to us. It could even be our email. But we can also do other things in terms of how we present ourselves. And one of the things that I like to think about is how we make people curious in everyday chit-chat conversations, right? So you lost count since the time you've been here of how many times people have said, how are you, what's new, what's up, how's your day, right? We ask those questions all the time. And our common responses to these things are fine, good, and busy. And those are not really great storytelling responses that leave the person, once they've met us, with a sense that we are particularly caring and particularly capable. So before I tell you what to say, I'm gonna go here to a different example. And this is, you recognize the picture here, this here is Stacey Abrams. And I'm gonna just advance the slide one. there we go. Okay, Stacey Abrams. And so Stacey Abrams gets interviewed on national TV on CBS Sunday Morning in between her first and second runs for governor. And she gets asked what I think is a hard question. And the question is, do you aspire to be the president of the United States? And I think that's a hard question, not just for her, but no one's ever asked me if I wanted to be the president, but people have asked me questions like that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Are you aspiring to this? Do you want to get promoted, et cetera? And when that happens, you're like, I'm not really sure what the right answer is to this. I have a belief, but if I say no, I don't want that, do people think I'm not ambitious and I'm going to quit? If I say yes, I do people think I'm over, confident in what I can achieve? I don't know really what to say. I'm just going to try to bat that question away because it feels uncomfortable. And so when I saw the interviewer ask Stacey this, I thought, wonder how she's going to respond. And she had a brilliant response, a great way to tell her story, all in 2 sentences. She said, do I hold it as an ambition to be the president? Absolutely, right? I am confident I can do this. But then the second part I thought was genius. She said, I have a responsibility to say yes to that question for every young woman, every person of color who sees me and decides what they're capable of based on what I think I am capable of. And I thought in 2 sentences, it's all it takes to be able to convince somebody that you're really capable and that you care. Now, you say, great, Alison, but no one has asked me to be the president or have CBS called me recently. But go back to this idea of all the times a day you're interviewed with all of these what I call throwaway questions. Questions that people ask you simply to be polite. And they may not at that point even be curious about the answer, but you, with a little bit of intention and creativity, could make them curious and strike up a conversation. So I host an event in Chicago. I invite a lot of professional friends, if you will. I invite this one guy who I really like, but I've only met him once. I don't really know him that well. And when he walks in, I greet him and I say, how was your day? And I do not know if I actually cared about the answer at that point, but he had this really genuine response. He said, Alison, I had the best day today. Now I was curious, and I did what any of you would do. I said, oh, why was your day so good? And then he got to tell me a story. And the story he told me was that he had met somebody on LinkedIn. He had met this guy for lunch that day. And by the end of that day, at the end of that lunch, they had agreed to work together. I learned in this conversation that my new friend was in wealth management. And he basically said, this guy brought me on as his wealth advisor. And I'm so excited, Alison, because now that this guy has his wealth, what he wants to do for his legacy is basically kind of change the world and make it a better place. And I am so grateful that by being able to advise him and partner with him, I am basically getting to play a part in maximizing his impact and the good that he is doing in the world. It was such a great day. It was a lovely story. It didn't take any longer to tell me than it took me to tell you. But really where it started was that he had a response in conversation that got me to want to stop and ask him more questions. So I think one of the ways that we tell good stories is we don't interrupt people like at an event where they're like drinking their drink and eating their stuffed mushroom and tap them on the shoulder and then say, let me tell you about my life. No one wants to do that. That feels like homework. And guess what? The person who's eating the mushroom doesn't want you to do it either, right? But you can wait for these natural opportunities as long as when they come, you take them and you say, hey, I can tell you something. And I've coached so many people about how to just start to tell their story by making people curious. I met a young woman. She was a volunteer for an organization that I was speaking at. She was taking a lot of photographs, and she said, I don't know how to tell people at my work that I do this without making it sound braggy that I'm volunteering at this organization. And I said, well, I don't know, how many photographs did you take today? She said, easily 500. I said, okay, well, the next time someone says, how was your weekend? Say, it was tiring. I took 483 photographs. I guarantee you someone is going to ask you, of what? And then you get to talk about it, right? Just to have create a little bit of curiosity. And then one final way to think about telling your story, of many strategies, is this notion of dual promotion. I talk about this in my book. I call it brag and thank. Psychologists will call it dual promotion, which is, you have to be able to talk about your wins. You have to be able to talk about your talents, your successes, because if you don't, people won't understand how capable you are. So much of your story has to come from you. They don't know you unless you tell them. But it feels so braggy and icky to be able to say, look at how I'm great. This strategy is a really great way to make you feel more comfortable, but also get you better results. And the idea is talk about your win, and then follow that up with gratitude or thanks for somebody else who participated in this. So I was talking to a journalist who was interviewing me, but she herself was an author and an up-and-coming speaker. And she said, Alison, I had something really cool happen to me. I got my first standing ovation. And she said, I really want to be able to share that information because I think it speaks to my skills as a speaker and might help me build my business. But what do I do with that, Alison? You can't put got standing ovation on a resume or even in your bio. Where does it go? I said, you should talk about it. You should be proud of it. But this might be one way you could be proud of it, one way you could talk about it. Put it on social media. Or the next time you're talking to a client, wait for a natural opportunity to bring it in. But don't just say, I got the standing ovation. That's the brag. But the thank is, who played a role in that? Because someone helped you get there. Whether it was event organizers like this who organized the most flawless event so that all you had to do was step on stage and deliver your message, or maybe it was your family because they helped you practice your talk 50 times, who you thank is less important than that you share the gratitude. And the research shows that when we talk about our wins in this way, we get credit for both. We get credit for being really capable, and we get credit for being really caring. Now, a lot of times, this comes up when we are involved in not so discretionary efforts at work. So raise your hand if you've ever been in a situation, here or otherwise, where there was something you were asked to do. It was outside of your job description, so in that sense it was discretionary. But you were of the belief that you could not say no without negative reputational consequences. You felt compelled to say yes. Anyone? Ever? Okay. It happens. This doesn't always happen equally to people. We do see evidence that it happens more to women, for sure. There's a great book, if you haven't read it, called The No Club, which is putting a stop to women's dead-end work. It's about the research that women are asked to do more favors for other people, particularly at work. And they're asked to do more favors, they volunteer to do more favors, and they often end up doing more non-promotable work. I always say, if you're in a situation where you are doing something that is otherwise non-promotable, you cannot wait for anybody to throw you a party. You have to throw your own party. You have to say yes because you felt like you have to. You have to do the best work you can. And then you need to put that in your story somewhere, because if you do it in silence, then it really isn't doing anything to advance your own interests. And so this is a technique that you could use, right? The simple update email, the update conversation. Hey, that thing I volunteered for, it went great. And special thanks to people A, B, and C who were also volunteered against their will, okay? If you have to do something, at least then think about putting it into your story. And this is a way to do this. I see this a lot. I see this a lot on social media. People do this, a lot of people do this very well on social media. I also see this a lot in the classic updating my boss email. Just so you know, here's what happened this week, this month, or here's where we are on the project. Put the brags in there. Here's the wins, and then put the thanks in there as well. And these are the ways that we can start layering our story in. So we meet people, we find ways to talk about ourselves that say, I am caring and I am capable. And then the next thing we need to think about doing is also beyond storytelling, actually adding value to people's lives. The greatest way to convince somebody that you are caring and you are capable is to use your unique talents to make their life better, your unique attributes, okay? And I'll give you a couple of different examples. All right, Instagram. Who's on Instagram? Okay, fewer hands. I'm on Instagram now, as of late. It's a newer thing for me. Finding my way. I was giving a talk, and a woman in the audience was helping the organizers document a lot of stuff for Instagram. So reels and photos and all this stuff. But then she asked a question like a lot of people have, and it really came down to authenticity, which is something I believe in very strongly. She basically said, I like social media, but in my workplace, I get the sense that a lot of my older colleagues think that social media, particularly things like Instagram or TikTok, are frivolous and childish, and I don't want to abandon things that I like to do, but I also don't want to be seen as, not serious about my career. What do you think about this? And I said, you absolutely should do things you love to do, but let me ask you a question. You seem like you're really good at it, like Instagram. Have you ever offered to use your talents to help them? She said, no, what do you mean? I said, well, I'll use myself. I am now on Instagram. I didn't grow up with it. I don't consider myself naturally skilled at it. If someone came to me and said, hey, Allison, I'd like to help you out. I've taken a few videos of you, or could I take some videos or photos? I could cut them into a reel for you, and you could have them for your social media. Or go to your comms team, who, no matter how large and talented your comms team is, they can't cover everything. To say, hey, here's where I'm going in the next couple weeks for work. Could I get some things for you that would be useful for our firm channels, whatever it is. As soon as you take something that you like to do, and you say, how can I use this in service to others? You are finding ways to be very, very authentic, but also very strategic in getting that person to say, you're very useful to me and you know things that I don't know. And it doesn't have to be something solely within your job description to think about building that status. It creates that value, it builds a conversation. So one of the things I always do when I meet people is try to think, even in a 5-minute conversation, how can I add value? And one of the ways that I love to do it is by always thinking about, even 5 minutes, making an introduction, right? The second you start to chat with somebody, even pure chit chat, people tell you about their lives. They tell you about a little bit about them. And I always think, who do I know that this person might also like to know that I might be able to introduce them? And an introduction is a form of value because it's something you have that they don't. I know people you don't know, and I'm willing to give you this person for your benefit. And what I also love about an introduction, because I am a very, very busy person, is it takes less time than making an Instagram reel. It is basically an email. Person A, meet person B, you're both spectacular, I'll get out of the way. That's all it takes, okay? But they have a tremendous amount of value, and so that's one of the things that I've coached myself to do every time I'm meeting a new person, because it's a quick way to add value. So this person here, and I say this, I also like this because literally everyone can do it, as my example is going to convince you of. This woman is named Myra Shaw. She is now a person in my network. I was the beneficiary being introduced to her by somebody else. Myra and I both do a lot of speaking and coaching, often in the space for women, and she has been amazing. I've appeared on her podcast. I visited her when I was in Houston for work. And again, none of it would have ever happened if someone didn't think to say, Myra and Allison might benefit from meeting each other. And I use Myra as one of the many people I've been introduced to because of the person who introduced us. My then 15, now 16-year-old son. He went to an academic kind of sleepaway program last year, and after the first night of the program, he texts me and says, Mom, there's a speaker here that I think does what you do. Could I introduce you? And I wrote back, sure, honey. And then he writes, how do I do that? Because he's 15. And before I had a chance to respond, he sends me a photo. There's my name and my email and everything on the page. And after the next session, I give him credit. The room wasn't quite this big, but it had hundreds of people in it. He went up to her at the podium and handed her the paper and said, I would like you to meet my mom. And she told me later, she said, at first I thought I was in trouble, that I had said something offensive and I was being turned in to answer to you. And she said, no, I quickly realized that wasn't what he was saying. He just wanted me to meet you. And she said, but I didn't really know why. And she said, you know what, in all my years of speaking to teenagers, not once has a teenage boy ever said, I'd like you to meet my mom. So she said, I did not know what you did or who you were, but I figured I should just honor it and roll with it. So we agreed to meet 30 minutes before I was picking him up at the end of the program. And it took us only 5 minutes to realize, yes, we absolutely should know each other. And it has been such a great relationship. But I say that because my son, I love him dearly, he's a really smart kid, but his talents are few at this point in life, right? He has a license, but I am not, do not drive in Chicago while he's on the road. He's just, he's questionable there. He doesn't put his clothes in the hamper. All he can cook is ramen. But even he can actually build relationships by simply keeping his eyes open and saying, I know you and I know you, and you might benefit to be together. And I think about that for him in terms of building his status, especially when you have to think about building status with people that you see as having nothing to offer. And often when you're young, you think, why am I as a kid ever gonna have something that an adult would want? And I always say, right, I guarantee you, Myra has met thousands and thousands of students in her time, but she'll remember him, right? Because of that one thing, which really wasn't that hard to do. So thinking about that mentality of how do I use the talents that I have or the things that I know to make other people's lives better. And then our last one today, I want to talk about is, in terms of having a good network, is we need to put our network to work for us, right? A network is not just people we're collecting like baseball cards. Networks exist, right, for people to respect us, but then for us to use that respect that they have for us as a resource to do other things for us in life. And one of the things that our network can do for us is they can help build our status with other people who don't yet know us. And that's both highly effective and highly efficient. So what I want to convince you is that you need to be more intentional about getting people to talk about you behind your back. Which, when I say it that way, it often conjures up an image like this, which feels very middle school. I have spent my entire adult life, Alison, trying to get people to not talk about me behind my back. When it is a negative, it's obviously that's the case. But so many of the things that get said about us when we are not around are positive. Those positive things are building our status while we don't have to say a word and while we are off doing something else. And those other people can talk about us in ways that we can never talk about ourselves, right? They can be extremely self-promoting or promoting of us and flattering without it ever looking immodest or lacking humility. So what we need to do is we need to take the networks that we have, the respect that we've earned, and we need to leverage it to get people to talk about us more behind our back. And there's two ways that we can do this. The first one, I know that you'll be behind, and the second one takes a little more courage, but not all that much, okay? The first one is this. If I can convince you of anything and you remember anything from our time here today, I want you to become an evangelical talker-upper of the good work that people around you are doing, right? Because when we go around and say great things about other people, when we build their status, guess what we know from psychology? Reciprocity governs relationships. When you walk into this hotel and you hold the first door open for the person behind you, that person will stop and hold the second door open for you. It's how relationships work. When people hear that you've been out in the world saying good things about them, and the grapevines are efficient, so they'll eventually will hear it, what do they want to do? They want to return the favor. They want to talk you up. So one of the most authentic and strategic things that we can do is start sharing the great things we believe about other people around us. And one of the ways I do it is I have a little rule that I can now catch myself, is when I find myself thinking something positive about somebody in my head, I try not to let that thought die there. I try to think, who else can I tell? How can I put that out into the world? Can I tell them? Can I build their confidence? Can I build our relationship? Or even better, can I tell somebody else? Can I go on social media and shout them out? Can I go into a group that they're in, introduce them to someone else with an intro that says they're spectacular? I always try to do that. And it comes back to you in spades. So becoming a great promoter of the other work people are doing is one of the biggest things we can do to build our own status. And the second one, which takes a little bit more courage, but I guarantee you it works extremely well, is to ask people to talk you up. And I say this because I come from decades of teaching negotiation and influence to audiences. And one of the things that we know about negotiation skills is they're not just for cars, houses, and salaries. These are skills that help you ask for whatever it is you want. And sometimes the thing we most want is for someone else to go into a room and to sing our praises. And I have found that I have had a 100% success rate doing this because I only ask people to do this in a situation where I am 100% sure that they highly respect me, and I'm only asking them to speak an opinion of me that they already hold. But I find when I ask people that the predominant look on their face once they realize what I'm asking them is not annoyance or frustration or anything like that. It's relief. It's relief that I've given them clarity for a way that they can help me that feels so easy because they already think positive things about me. And they're saying, you just want me to go to that room that I was going to go into anyway and say something about you that I believe is true? Yes, thank you for asking me that, Alison, and not asking me to give you a ride to the airport. It's so much easier. People want to be helpful, and they want to be helpful in the most easy and efficient way possible. And one of the things we know from psychology is we grossly overestimate how put out people will be by our requests for help. And asking somebody to talk you up is highly valuable to you, and it's really easy for them, as long as you pick the right person, a person that you've already invested in, that they highly respect you. And that is how we're going to be able to leverage our network. So as we conclude, I want to offer you this challenge. I always say, I am a professor, I am not your professor. You're not being graded on this. But I highly encourage you to do some of these kinds of things because building our status, building our network shouldn't feel like homework, right? But if I were going to give you homework that felt fun, it would look like this. Meet 10 new people, right? You can certainly meet them here. That's not going to be hard, but meet in a week. Meet 10 new people. They do not have to become your best friends for life. You just need to meet them. Make 10 what I call small deposits, which are little things that you can do that add value to someone else's life, right? Recommend a restaurant, make an introduction, offer to help somebody on a project doing something that you find really fun to do anyway. Use your skills on social media. Do something small for somebody. I guarantee you, right, that kindness is going to be reciprocated in kind. And then finally, talk up 10 people to others. Say 10 great things about people when they're not around, or extra credit, ask 10 people to talk you up. And through these kinds of everyday behaviors that do not derail our day, right, we build stronger networks, we invest in our status as one of the most important resources that we have to live the happy life we deserve and to be able to do the great work we want to do. So as I leave you today, very sadly, I put this QR code up here. This is like the day of QR codes. This one just goes to a little hidden page on my website, which just gives you a chance, if you want to do 3 things. Sign up for my newsletter, it's free. It's called The Upper Hand. Connect with me on LinkedIn and connect with me on Instagram. So if those things are of interest to you, that QR code will help you do it, okay? I am going to get off of this stage because I know that you have an amazing full day ahead of you. But as I do, I just want to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for inviting me here today. And I wish you all the best going out and getting credit for all of the greatness that you have within you. Thank you.